Welcome to Season 6 of the Prosthetics and Orthotics Podcast. We are absolutely thrilled to have you on board. We're talking to experts who know their stuff, the patients who've experienced these technologies firsthand, the vendors who provided the tools, and the thought leaders shaping the future. Together, we will uncover the ways to make the lives of those relying on these incredible technologies even better. We hope these discussions are going to be the highlight of your day.
My name's Joris Beals. This is another episode of the Prosthetics and Orthotics Podcast with Brent Wright. How you doing, Brent?
Hey, Joris. Doing well. Have you recovered from four necks?
Kind of. I mean, I'm not supposed to have my voice back this early. I think, I got quite lucky. I didn't get too sick or anything. I could still speak. So I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
That's awesome. Well, we handled the podcast without you. That was the funniest thing. I sent you the link and you're like, dude, I'm at four necks. I'm not being on the podcast.
How'd it go? How was it? Was it better without me? You can say it was better without me.
No, we hopped into the weeds of scanning. So that's where I wish that you would have been a part of that with Bo Helmrich from Digitized Designs. But it's gotten really great reviews. I mean, it's quickly become one of the fastest downloaded shows because I think there's so many people interested in scanning.
Okay, so maybe we should do some more stuff on that. Or maybe we should have more without me.
No. I had to talk too much. You were missed, and we reminisced about the things that we were missing at Form Next in your absence. So did anything kind of pop out at you? Or I know that there appeared to be a lot of prosthetic and orthotic stuff. Was that a surprise to you?
There was a lot of like elastomeric stuff. So a lot of stuff that was just generally from bike handles to headrests to seats. Not only from like Uxler, who's been doing it for a while with carbon, but also from like HP, a lot of stuff like that. Also from a lot of other players, a lot more soft things than compared to other years. So that was a real an interesting thing. There was Rapid Liquid Print, who we know already. We both love the technology. And I think that has a lot of potential for OMP as well. And then there's Chromatic, which also is kind of like Rapid Liquid Print as you extrude into a hydrogel. And you can then mix materials, and then the hydrogel is like a support material. And you can make, rubber-like elastomeric kind of materials. And then there's another one, Chromatic, which uses a mixing head to extrude material, this time on kind of like a flat surface, but they have the innovative chemistry to make that stuff adhere in a better way, let's say, than another case. So that's more flexible, more durable, flexible materials. So that's very exciting, I think. There's a lot of stuff. There was generally a lot of stuff there. My head is still swimming. I saw an awful lot of stuff, like a ridiculous amount of stands, ridiculous amount of people at like 30 meetings. So it's a bit overwhelming still. But the exciting things, I think, is the Rapid Liquid Print, the Chromatic. I think those are new technologies. And also just like, everyone was touting their flexibles from BASF to Lubrizol, but also polypropylene, also TPA from Evonik, which we talked about before as well. So a lot more materials to choose from that are super relevant, I think, in vat polymerization and also in powder bed fusion and in FDM or material extrusion. A lot more elastomeric materials. So that's really good for OMP, I think.
That's cool. Did anybody pull you aside and say, Joris, we've got to talk about this article? These articles that you're writing, you've got to change your tone.
There were a lot of people. No, I think everyone at Formex at least understood. They didn't agree with everything, or so some people did and some people didn't. But there's this RIP series that the people at Formex typically really understood what I was trying to do. So if I got negative stuff, it's from people who are new to the whole 3D printing thing. They don't get it. But I got a lot of feedback on the article. So that was really, really good. I'm really happy with that. Cool. And I just released the third one. And the fourth one's coming out soon as well.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So that's going to be good. And the third one is about rapid applications. So that's my idea of just developing application much quicker in a different way than everyone's doing, which I'm going to be doing the next couple of years, and Brent's going to help me with as well. And the other one, and the next one is let's kill all the 3D printing evangelists.
Oh boy,
that one's going to be fun. But anyway, so who's on?
That's funny.
Who we got on the podcast today, Mom?
Well, this is going to be a fun one. I'm really excited to have Mike Bolland on the podcast. He is a he does a bunch of things. If you haven't checked him out on LinkedIn, check him out on LinkedIn. Mike Bolland. He is part of multiple nonprofits. He's a fellow podcaster with, why didn't we think of this kind of podcast title? We're Not Stumped Amputee Podcast. Wow. Well, I don't think we could have. Mike is missing his right arm.
I think it's better for him to do this than for us.
Yeah. And but what's interesting is he chooses not to wear a prosthesis, but he is a massive advocate for those living with limb loss. So I'm super excited to hear from him today, and he's just well connected, and I'm excited to kind of hear his story and just see where our paths cross along the way.
Okay, welcome to the podcast, Mike.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So for you, I guess how you got involved with OMP is well, probably not a great story, or is it?
Well, really, as far as the prosthetics are concerned, like Brent was saying, I am a huge advocate for them. I just happened to break mine when I was 14 years old because I used to, wear one, and I broke it, and my parents asked me if I wanted to get it replaced. And at that point, I was on and off with my own prosthetic, and probably more off than on. So I said, "No, I'm good." And that was a decision I made back then. And, to this day, I still don't wear one, except on Halloween. I got to admit, I do come out as a pirate every Halloween. And, I do put it back
Very
on.
good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And wait a minute. And okay, so I can understand as a 14-year-old, you're trying to find your own identity. You want to lose the thing. I get it, right? But haven't you been tempted later on, been like, oh, they're getting better now? Have you been tempted time after time, or?
No, I really haven't. And one of the reasons why is I think I've just spent so much time of my life looking at things because two-handed people will ask me how I do X, whether it be like work on cars or whatever it is. And they'll say, well, how do you do it that way? And I think obviously two-handed people look at things as a two-handed person, whereas me, the first thing I look at is how I do it as a one-handed person. I don't look at things as a two-handed person, then back it out and go, how am I going to do it? So for the last, let's say 40 years, I've just been looking at things as a one-handed person. Now, there may be a time in the future, I would never rule it out, because there's the one thing that I've certainly learned from the people that have been on my podcast and got to meet in person is the wear and tear on your residual limb or your regular limb. It can add up. And, after so many years of, I was on the Pro Bowlers Tour, I played basketball, played golf. So yeah, there's a little bit of wear and tear on my left side. So I would never rule it out.
Okay. And then because I'm really curious about this. So if you're one-handed, you say you approach your problem with a one-handed person, is that much more in a sequential way, right? Because you could do less things together, or is it more in a kind of like you adapt to every situation just like anyone else would? Or is it you do think completely differently? How does that work?
Well, as an example, I think, when I brought up working on cars, like a vice grip is my best friend, right? Because it's hard to hold two wrenches, let's say. But if you have a vice grip on one side, you certainly can hold two and not in a bolt and get things off. So there's like just little tips and tricks. I have a tremendous amount of balance in my arm and my stump. So I can walk around with my cell phone and it's almost like I'm holding it, but it's really balanced on my stump. I kind of make a joke. It's like, this is really a hands-free phone. I don't know what you guys are talking about,
cool.
But that's kind of and so because of that balance, it's really enabled me to do quite a bit, because I use that balance for a lot, whether it be even just walking around with a glass of water or going to a buffet, let's say. I know those are kind of funny things, but it definitely is something that I've been able to do. And it's something I don't even think about it, to be honest. It's just such a natural thing for me.
That's kind of interesting. And do you feel like you could advocate for this? If I had like a similar situation, would you tell me like try my way because it's better than just getting that prosthetic, or do you just think everyone should just find their own path? Kind of.
I think everyone should find their own path. That's why I really am a huge fan of prosthetics, and I believe in them 100%. And I think it's a personal choice, and this is my personal choice. And I think people need to experience what is best for them. And I wouldn't, if they want to go my way, that's fine. If they want to have a prosthetic, which I know many of my friends and acquaintances that I've met over the years do wear prosthetics, and it's fine. It's great. I think it's a very good thing.
And there's one thing I think we kind of talked about with other guests as well, but this whole thing, like if you're a child, I don't think you really notice that much. And you may think of, you don't really think of, I don't remember as a kid not really thinking anyone was different from anyone else, no matter how different they were anyway. But I think as a teenager, you become acutely aware of like the herd and not being in the herd and not having the right jacket or not, saying the right thing. Was it very difficult at that age to have limb loss?
Well, no, because the first thing I did was buy a red jacket. I'm kidding, of course. Actually, it's one of those things that, in my experience, and that I can only speak for myself, I was meant to be born with one hand. This is the way I am. So it doesn't bother me at all. And so if people want to make fun of me, and they have, I mean, people try to bully me. I'm not going to say that never happened. But in my situation, it was more like, well, I also have brown hair. If you make fun of me for having brown hair, it'd be like, that's what? That doesn't even make any sense. And it's the same thing about me having one hand. I actually like it quite a bit. It's one of the things I do like about myself. I'm human just like everyone else, so there's other things about me I wish I can improve on. But having one hand isn't one of them. But I do want to say, though, to your point, that I have met people that are just like me, the same type of beginnings in life, born without a hand. And they did go through some bad experiences when they were younger, and I feel bad about that. And it's a tough thing to have to grow up being a little bit different. So when I speak to others that are like me and maybe at that vulnerable age, I just try to kind of convey that having confidence isn't necessarily a bad thing, and you're okay being the way you are. And if you want to wear a prosthetic and you're 14, 15 years old, great. If not, that's fine too. Just make sure you have your head up and be proud of yourself, and it'll be like Teflon if people want to make fun of you for how you are.
Okay. I think a radical self-acceptance thing. In your case, it seems to be kind of more of is it a religious thing, or is it just really a radical acceptance of self? Like, I was born this way, I'm meant to be this way. I think that could seem like a really, really healthy kind of position to start from, right?
I think it is. And I'll be honest, I have to give all the credit to my parents. The formidable years of me growing up, and I have a brother and a sister, and we never treated each other differently, let alone me. So I really have to give it up to them. Unfortunately, they're both no longer with us, but they really they started the foundation of my life that if it wasn't for them, I don't know how things would have turned out. I really believe that they helped me quite a bit in the way that I feel today.
That's like super cool. That's super cool. And then another thing I wanted to ask other people, but how is that? But kind of like things like dating, for example. Is it difficult, or do you just filter out all the not so nice people? So actually, kind of like it's kind of a help in that sense, or what's that kind of thing, or do you just have to overcome that with self-confidence?
Well, you actually brought up a really good point. I mean, let's face it. If someone is, and I'll say it this way, if someone is shallow enough not to want to go out with someone with one hand, I probably don't want to date them anyway, right? So that's a very good point. But I just never. I guess it's just weird the way I think of it. The only time I really think that or realize I have one hand is if I see a picture of myself, because I see the mirror image of myself in the mirror, right? And I just look normal to me. But when I see me in a picture and I go, wow, I have one hand, I bet people notice that, right? That's a little bit more noticeable than I think. That's the only time I really see that. But as far as when I was dating, I've been married 28 years, but when I was dating, it was just one of those, it's just, hey, I'm me. Hopefully I'm a nice enough person that you'd want to date me. If not, that's fine too. But I never let having one hand scare me away from getting shot down anyway.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I think that's a really healthy attitude. And I hope that because I think I guess you could have that self-confidence. I just remember that, as a teenager, it's really difficult to have that kind of level of self-confidence about anything, like whether it's a pimple in your face or anything more kind of different, let's say.
There's other things in my life where it's like, hey, I wish I can improve this. I wish I was better at that. So at the end of the day, and as I talk to other amputees, it's the one thing that we all have in common is we're all human. So we're all certainly, we have our faults and our places where we wish we could be better. But for me, just for whatever reason, mine never focused on me having one hand. And mine was always more of, hey, everybody gets to stare at me. That's great. I'm a ham. I like that.
Mike, I'm kind of curious. I mean, you mentioned it and gave a lot of credit to your parents, and we have our listeners span a large gamut of people. Not only users but parents, clinicians, and that sort of thing. Can you share a little bit, maybe for parents, of what parents can do if they have a child with limb loss that has, that's made you who you are today.
Yeah, my parents really allowed me to try and fail. And one of the things they talked about working on a car or any kind of mechanical thing with the wrenches and things like that. I'm blanking what I said earlier, but my dad is the one who taught me that. He taught me, hey, you can use this type of wrench on this side and this type of wrench on that side. But after that, it was like, now it's figuring it out by yourself. Because one of the things my parents, I think, and I even have to give them more credit, because at the time there was not the ability for them to do a lot of research, jump on YouTube, things like that. They just had this innate belief that I'm going to teach my son how to do it, but we're not going to be over his shoulder to do it. And that's where I go back to saying they allowed me to try and fail. And I fail. And if there's one fault I do have, I can get frustrated at times, just like we all can, maybe, especially when I'm golfing, but that's a whole nother story. But they allowed me to fail. But the failures, though, built up to the successes. So if I had to try something 3, 4, 5, 10 times just to figure it out, I would do it. And they allowed me to do that. It wasn't like on the 5th attempt, if I failed, they would just take a utensil, let's say, or like a knife and a fork, let me cut your meat for you. No, I had to figure that out for myself. And it was kind of as I look back, maybe a unique bond there, because not only did they let me try and fail, I wanted to try and fail. So we kind of met in the middle on both of those things. But again, as I said, I have a brother and a sister, and I think one of the other things too that they did that was fantastic for me was not treat me any different. I mean, and we'd all joke around about it, and I still joke around about it, but they didn't treat me any different. I wasn't cut any break, and they weren't either, right? We were all together. We were all raised very similarly in what our expectations were in life and what we can achieve. And all three of us were taught that if you work hard, you can achieve whatever you'd like. So those are some of the things that my parents did for me growing up.
Yeah, I think that the consistency thing is could be really, really important. You don't want to be like kind of the victim or the special one, or you can't pick on Mikey because of Mikey, I think that could be a recipe for disaster if you get like kind of treated as like kind of like the special one by the parents. I think that could have ended very badly for you as a personality, let's say.
Yeah, I agree 100%. If they would have treated me special, yeah, it could just have a negative effect on the rest of my life, thinking, well, then in the real world, as I got to be older and had a career, I expect to be treated special. And I really don't. I expect to be treated like everyone else, certainly not less than anyone else, which is, if there is a battle, sometimes that's the battle. But I don't want to be given any opportunities just because of the way I am, but I don't want to lose out on any opportunities just because of the way I am. And my parents really instilled that in me, and I really appreciate that.
That sounds very, very healthy, I think. And then how about like at school? Like, are there teachers that really treated you in a very special way? You thought, oh, that's really commendable how they did this? Or did they kind of ignore you? And did you really appreciate being ignored? What really worked for you? What really helped you?
One thing I do remember is my parents, when it came, especially my mom. My dad was, he worked quite a bit, but he certainly wasn't, he was always there for me. I don't want to make it sound like he was, but my mom was a little bit more there when it came to school. And there were times where, for whatever reason, maybe it was something I came home and said, or maybe my sister or brother saw something. If there was a time where they thought that the teachers were giving me any special treatment, my mom would go down and talk to him and say, no, I want my son treated just like everyone else. He doesn't need any additional help. He'll figure it out. If he doesn't, let me know, let us know, and we'll figure it out together. But for the most part, it was more about not trying to get that special treatment. It was about trying to be just another person. And by that, it really helped everyone within the class too. Even the kids understood, hey, he's just he's just Mike. He's just there. And, especially in elementary school, I would say I probably always wore a prosthetic in elementary school. Yeah, it was just an accepted thing. And everyone, all my friends and everyone I went to school with, all my teachers that I can remember, were always very kind to me. And I really appreciate that.
Super good. And also in cases of, like you said, that some people made fun of you, but I think maybe you alluded to maybe some cases were a little bit closer to bullying. What do you do? I have no idea. What would be the right course of action? you jump in there and be the protective parent, or you're not, you know what I mean? What's the right thing there?
Well, I never came home with a story that was to the point where they should have gotten involved. I think they would have definitely got involved with the bullying. But again, it's one of those things where when people try to bully you, they're trying to pick at the what they perceive as your weakest link internally. And that when they make fun of me having one hand, that is far from the weakest link as far as I think. I really believe that it's my strongest link. So I was always able to just stop that at the very early level. Like if they wanted to make fun of me, I probably would tell them a better joke than they had. So I mean, they'd be like, okay, well, this ain't going to work. And they go on to the whatever they were going to do next. When it came to me, I was just always very happy that I had one hand. So having one hand was just not something that people could make fun of me about. I mean, hey, listen, I'm not going to tell you that there's hasn't been times in my life where people have said something that I'd be like, that's not a very nice thing to say. But as far as the bullying when I was a kid, it because of the way I felt about myself, I think it was just like I said earlier, like a Teflon shield to the bullies.
Talk a little bit about sports. I mean, a lot of amputees that have come on the show have said that sports really also helped their mindset. So you mentioned basketball and golf and other things. Have you been, a sports person your whole life, or is that something that you picked up later on in life? And how has that sports or athletic adventures, so to speak, changed who you are, or made you part of who you are?
Yeah, I'm a big sports fan, and I love playing sports. Probably the thing I like to do more than anything is go out and play basketball and shoot baskets. And at this point in my life, I think more people are amazed that I'm still able to do that because of my age and then having one hand. But I love it. It's so fun. I can dribble with either hand. I can spin the basketball on either hand. I love doing basketball. Golf is another thing. I picked that up probably in high school and didn't really get serious probably, I'm going to guess, until my mid-30s, but I golf quite a bit now. I really enjoy that game. And of course, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I had a friend, and to give you the backstory on bowling, I had a friend that asked me to join a junior league when I was 13. And I was just so excited about that sport and fell in love with that sport so much that my mom would drop me off at a local bowling alley here, and I'd bowl 50 games a day because I was like addicted to it. And I was very fortunate. Yeah, I would be there all day. I would be there all day. And I was just so fortunate that my passion to practice met some natural talent. And within 3 years, I won my first state title. And then within a few years after that, bowled my first 300 game. And then in my early 20s, I became the first one-handed amputee professional bowler on the Professional Bowlers Tour. And that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. It was short-lived. I had a cup of tea. The problem with any kind of sports like that, whether it be golf, bowling, any kind of single sports, and probably tennis, you do need backing to stay out there to pay your expenses as you're coming up and climbing the ladder. And that part was really difficult for me, just gaining those funds. But hey, I did it, and I had a good time. I cashed on national tour, my highest finish in a regional tour, second. So I like the numbers I put out, but I also like my life now. So it was time it was time to retire from that game. I did retire.
And then how about in business? Have there been times when the one-handedness kind of like harmed you in business, or do you feel like it didn't affect you at all or much at all?
No, I think it did. I think that I will say did have an effect on me. There's many times I would apply for jobs and I just wouldn't get the call back. And after the interview, I mean, they were pretty excited about getting me in for the interview. Then after the interview, I wouldn't hear a thing. And even the job that I did have, I worked for a company here in the States called Discount Tire, and I worked for them for 30 years. And I was very proud that I was able to work myself from working in the stores, changing tires with one hand, all the way up to corporate and, really heading up some of the major initiatives, whether it be e-business, digital marketing, and our customer experience when I decided to move on from the company. But they had me work under the table at a store location for a couple of days just to see whether I could do it with one hand. And I don't really take that as a negative thing, because if I can't change someone's tire safely, well then, boy, I probably shouldn't be changing people's tires. But it was still a different path than a normal a person with two hands would go through. And I do know that many times, many applications, many tries at different organizations, just didn't work out, probably because of the way I looked. But again, it's almost like dating. If they don't want to hire someone like me, I probably don't want to work for that company either.
I think that is a good test. I mean, I know so many people that work really, really hard for companies that didn't deserve it. So I think that is a case where I think that may have actually given you dividends, but it may have caused you to be without work for much longer than you should have.
Yeah, and it was frustrating. There was times I was very frustrated. I'm not going to lie on that. So, you talk about some of the challenges. That was definitely one of the challenges. And as I talked to others like me, and certainly other amputees of differently than me, that's one of the challenges that we all seem to share, is that one. The employment one is a little bit difficult because of how we're looked at times. And I think maybe we're all looked at this at times, but I'll just say, in my experience, I think there's, and others that I've talked to, at times people do look at us and they think it's more than just a physical handicap. And with me, that's all it is. And with many others, that's all it is. So it's interesting how we're looked upon, and it does affect our ability for careers and jobs.
Okay, I think that is quite limiting, and I think, but does it at the same time give you like an extra kind of spirit or something like that, or not at all? You're just thinking, yeah, I'm 100% like everyone else, brown hair, blonde hair, black hair, it's all good.
No, that drives me even more. that will give me even more initiative. It's even though I'd like to think of myself as extremely determined, when there's times where either I can't do something, I'm just like any other person. There's times where I can't do something, or it takes me a few tries. That just makes me work even harder and just like focus even more. So I don't just sit around on that one. If there's something, if I'm not getting an opportunity and I feel it's because of the way I am, I will work harder. I will do whatever it takes. It does light that fire in me.
And okay, so have you thought, by the way, of renting yourself out to the insurance companies, telling everybody like, oh, you don't need a prosthetic? They would love this, I think.
Oh no, I would never do that.
All right.
I understand your premise 100%.
They'll pay you.
Like I said earlier,
have you thought of going non-prosthetic? All the cool kids.
Boy, they would love nothing more than that. Yeah, exactly. They would love that so much. But again, my belief is 100%. My parents, yeah, they provided me one for the first, like I said, 13, 14 years of my life. So I'm 100% for them. I know they're essential, and they enhance people's quality of life. And that maybe not in my case, but everyone is a little bit different. So yeah, I love I love the spirit of your question, because I think you're right on that. But I would be the wrong person to ask about being anti-prosthetic, because I'm not that at all.
So you got this vice grip you use for working on cars. Did you adapt to anything else, like the golf clubs or the bowling? I guess it would work, but is there anything else, anything in your life you've adapted in some way?
The golf clubs I don't, but there is one thing. I created my own holder, I guess, for my dumbbells, because I like to work out. So I created these dumbbell holders, or at least one, out of PVC. Out of PVC for plumbing PVC, and then I put a U-bolt at the end, and I'm able to do curls. I'm able to do tricep kickbacks and presses, and I'm able to do quite a bit with that. So that's one thing I have adapted for me. I can't think of anything else, though. I mean, even when I drive, I don't use anything differently when I'm driving or anything like that. But I'm sure there's probably more. That's a great question. The dumbbells come to mind, but I can't think of really anything else off the top of my head where I go, hey, I got to build this. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I hope I didn't cut anybody out there. So I like riding motorcycles, like more trail riding. I've done some road riding as well. So obviously the throttle is on the right side, and I don't have a right hand. So what I've done for that is I put a hose clamp on there, and I tighten it up, and right where you screw it in, like the screw itself, I put my stump around that and push down and pull up on that. So that's something that I've done to make it easier for me to ride like motorcycles. Great question. I'm sure there's other things. I apologize for not thinking those off the top of my head, but because like I was saying, a lot of these things are just natural to me, so I don't even think about it. I do think about what I built for my workouts, though. I actually did a video on that and how not only me using them, but how I made it in case anybody else needs it.
Yeah, I think that's a good addition as well for both sides as well. It seems like a good idea to keep working everything out and being really fit. So and okay, how can we get we can get you a free kind of visit with Brent? How do we make you come over to the prosthetic side? Well, magical robot hand, body driven. Is there nothing that would make you kind of like change your mind?
Well, maybe a hand injury, that certainly would do it. And one of the things I thought was interesting, that I kind of kidded around earlier, but I really was Captain Hook for Halloween a couple of weeks ago. And so I put my original prosthetic on, even though the socket doesn't fit so well because I was a little younger at the time, but not too bad. I was kind of surprised. But the thing that really surprised me was how when I put it on, and I actually drove with it for the first time. And in my life, I've never driven a car with that on. But the thing that really was surprising to me was it's almost like riding a bike. Because my stump is probably the end of my stump to where the end of my hook is probably a good 5 inches, right? I mean, there's quite a bit of distance there, but the distance immediately came back. It was like I've never not worn a hook. And I telling you earlier, is some of the people I've met, some of my buddies, that he wears a hook, and I always kid him. I go, man, if I fix my hook up right now, I'd be better with my hook than you would. And he's, we're good friends and we get to rib each other and stuff like that. But I really think I could throw that hook right on right now and have no problems with it. But the exciting thing is what you two do. I mean, there's so many new things that are out there. To your point, hey, is there something that would make me go to that side? Probably. They're neat. And not only they're neat, but they're so much more advanced than what I had. I have a funny picture of me when I was probably 11 years old. My parents got me an artificial hand, what was considered an artificial hand at the time, but it's 100% mechanical. And I looked like Woody Harrelson in Kingpin. It was about 6 inches too long than my hand. It looked funny. It looked kind of ridiculous. But I'm sitting there smiling, going, "Hey, look at I got my prosthetic hand at 11 years old." Everything's come along so much, and I really admire the prosthetic industry and how people that are taking their expertise are helping people that really need it. And that's why, again, I'm 100% for prosthetics and what they do to help enhance people's lives. I'm 100% for that.
Take us a little bit down, and I know you've got a lot of friends that are, prosthetic users and such. What makes, and we have a lot of clinicians that listen, what makes a prosthetist a good prosthetist specifically? And then maybe jump into a little bit, upper extremity prosthetics is definitely a niche industry already, which is prosthetics itself. Mm-hmm. And so what do you say to people that are looking to get an upper extremity prosthesis, what to look for, what to avoid, that sort of thing, from your perspective or from some of your friends' perspective?
Yeah, that's a excellent question. I think number one, just like as an example, I went through cancer. So going through that and having a doctor that I trusted was immense to me, because we're talking, as we talk about prosthetics, sometimes we're talking about a product, but there's so much more to what goes into it. A lot of it has to do with the mental health and the people going through very traumatic times in their lives. So having somebody that'll listen, I think it's number one, and being able to have that conversation and the real conversation. And it's a two-way street. I would say that as I talk to people, I understand that sometimes, especially a new amputee, you might think, well, this is the way it's supposed to fit. This is supposed to be loose, or this is supposed to be tight. Well, you may want to ask that question. You have to be your own advocate and make sure that you're telling the truth on both sides. And I'll go back to my cancer. I mean, there's some things that sometimes you're like, do I really want to say that? Well, I'm glad I did, because I'm on your podcast today probably because of that. And I think those are the things that we probably should do in life in general, is just make sure we're very open and honest on some of the most important things we go through. And I think one of those is getting a prosthetic when you need it. You have to be open and honest. And it is a two-way street. So make sure you get someone that you trust. You can look in the eye. You have a good camaraderie, almost to a certain extent of friendship. It's not just numbers. It's about making sure you have that relationship with the person, just like anything else in life. I think that would be something that I have learned, and I hope I answered your entire question.
So it is interesting, though. You did not mention experience fitting upper extremity prostheses. So listening is important, and technically upper extremity is part of everybody's scope of practice. But would you say that you kind of dive in, like say a clinician doesn't have experience or a lot of experience in upper extremity, but they're a great listener and you feel good about their capabilities, do you kind of just dive in together and say, hey, let's figure this out together?
Well, I'll give you the Mike Bolland answer on that. Yes, I probably would. Someone that can listen and take my input, I think is extremely important. That's just my personal opinion. I certainly believe in the experience, though. I can't say that I don't believe in that, but if I was going to err on one side, it's almost like, well, let's go back to bowling. Every once in a while, you might be able to throw the ball a little bit outside and have it come back, or you might be able to tug it a little bit and have it set. I mean, just like in golf, where you make the mistake sometimes, or if you do, it really benefits your game. And I think it's kind of the same when it comes to this. If you're going to make a mistake or gear yourself to one side or the other, I just think the relationship and the openness might be the way you'd want to go. That's my opinion, though. I have nothing to back that up other than my gut.
I think that's great. And I don't disagree with you. There's so many creative clinicians out there that you might be their first experience interacting with the upper extremity. And as long as they're willing to put in the time to do that, and obviously perform in a good way for it, then I think both the patients and the clinicians benefit from that. And I mean, we just had a patient on a few weeks ago, and he said the exact same thing as what you did. It is about relationships, and it has become a friendship for him as well. And so that combination and the trust that they have your best interest in mind really makes for the best outcome. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the relationship, just like almost anything in life, it just helps. It helps having those honest conversations. If I trust this person, I can say, you know what, this strap is a little, or this socket's a little tight, or whatever it is. If you can have that conversation without feeling like you're offending someone or questioning their expertise, if you really have that great relationship, it's going to go a long way for success on both sides. Learning experience for one, and certainly a better prosthetic experience for the other.
Well, and I also think that the other thing is everybody is so much different, and it's going to be a learning experience all the way around. Everybody, even though that thing that you did with a patient that has a similar amputation, they have goals that are different than yours, and so the actual prosthesis is going to be different than what you built for this other person. So I think that's interesting, and it can be changed, right? This is not it's not heart surgery. And I was actually having this discussion with somebody recently, like they were talking about how their heart surgeon, that they went to the heart surgeon. The heart surgeon has essentially zero personality, but is considered to be the best heart surgeon in the world. And they're like, I'm okay with it being him not having much of a personality and making me happy. I care about the experience at that point. But prosthetics is not that, right? It is not heart surgery. And so that's where I think the relationship side of things is so important.
Yeah, the soft skills are very important. That's a great point.
So one thing that I do want to point out at one point, that you decided later on in life to start doing like stand-up comedy. Well, was that just like a kind of like a something you've always wanted to do? Was that just another challenge, or why did you end up doing that?
Well, thank you for asking me about that. Really what it had to do with was the cancer. It really had to do with that, and thinking of my own mortality and things that are on your bucket list. And there's a couple things that I wanted to do on the other side of cancer, certainly hoping that I would get it on the other side. I don't want to be melodramatic, but I think anyone that's gone through cancer, thoughts do cross your mind. There was two things I wanted to do. Number one, I wanted to go back on the pro bowlers tour and hit one tour stop, and I still haven't done that. But I've actually started bowling. So, I mean, again, later in life, so I may do that. The other one was stand-up comedy, because it was something I always wanted to try. And really, the inspiration for my comedy is my life as a one-handed person, because I've just always, I think in a way of acceptance, I've always kind of joked around about having one hand. And again, with the way I feel about it and how I like it, it's very natural. And a lot of my comedy centers on me having one hand and actually making fun of two-handed people, because it's, just kind of fun, like, hey, on one hand, on the other hand, I'm stumped. It's like, what are these expressions? I can count on one hand how many times I've done that. Me too. I can count it. Everything in my life I can count on one hand. So it's funny, and people do enjoy it. And I think it's a way to hopefully break down some barriers and open things up, and have people look at people like me a little bit different, and maybe the next person coming along will have it a little easier. Yeah. But I enjoy it. On the selfish side, I really enjoy it, and I love it, and I like making people laugh, and it's been something that I've certainly gone farther than I thought I would, just on a whim, starting it to a point to where I'm getting hired and I'm doing it. It's been a lot of fun.
Okay, well, Mike, thank you so much. I think really we can learn from you is like to just have this really, really positive attitude, this radical kind of acceptance, and this radical path forward. I think we could all learn from that, and we should all try something like that as well. It's really inspirational. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Thank you both.
And thanks, Brent, for being here today.
Oh, this was great. And having Mike's perspective, not only on not wearing a prosthesis, but what adaptive equipment he uses, and then all the way down to the relationships. And I think what surprised me the most out of this, when you asked the question, Joris, about did it make a difference with jobs or work, in my mind, I thought Mike was going to say, no, it didn't make a difference. And when he came in like right after, it said, yes, it's absolutely made a difference. I have been on interviews and not gotten called back, and I know it's because I didn't have an arm. That was, maybe it's just my naive self, but that was really eye-opening, because that wouldn't, carve somebody out from working with me. But
you would see it as a positive, dude. You would be like, oh, wait a minute.
To me, it just, and I know this is my life every day, but Mike, I was really taken aback by that. I did not, I really had no idea. And I'm sorry to say that. And, I've been in O&P since I was a teenager. So this is like, it's been my everyday life, but to hear that story, and what other patients may face, that really bothered me, resonated with me.
Yeah, that's just from my experience. That I won't even. I can name companies, but I'm not going to. I'm not here to do that. But 100%. I mean, at times it wasn't even a feeling. It was something that I was told. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge for others like me. But just keep moving forward. Keep going, and you don't want to work for that place that doesn't want to hire you.
All right, so thanks, Eye Opener, and thank you for listening. This is another episode of the Prosthetics and Orthotics podcast with Brent Bright and Joris Fields. Have a great day.